Hello guys, my name is Gavin, and this will be a tutorial on how to get input from all keys, or how to get information from any key you tap, and have it so that we can type it out on a sentence like this, or a line, and have it so that it will drop down to the next line after a certain amount of characters. Alright, and I'm just going to get started. File new, and OK. So to start off, what we're going to do is right click on this cube in the middle. Actually, let's double click the A button first. So double click the A button and hit X and delete. Hit 7 to go in the top view, and do spacebar and add a text object. Alright, now that we have this text object, I'm just going to slightly drag it towards the middle, and go from defaults to game logic, and go from Blender render to Blender game. Next, what we're going to do is add a game property. That will be a string, and I will call it user inputs like this. Okay, now that we have this user input string variable, let's add an always sensor. Click those first three dots, add a Python controller, and connect it like this. Okay, now that we have that, let's do templates, Python, and then game logic simple, and delete the portion that I've highlighted. Hit Control and scroll up on your mouse to make your text larger, and let's rename the script to scripts.py, like this. Okay, now that we have that, what we are going to do is imports events and logic from the BGE. So let's do from BGE. Imports logic, comma, events, like this. Alright, now that we have that, let's define key events is going to be equal to the logic.keyboard.events, like this. Alright, so now that we have that, let's define the key that we're hitting. So what's going to happen right here is whenever we tap a key, whether it be the A key, T key, etc., we're going to have it stored inside this variable called hit key, and it's going to be equal K for K in key events. So essentially key for key in the key events right here. And we're going to put a slash like this, drop down, hit the tab key a few times like this, and let's have if key events K double equal logic.kx inputs just activated. Okay. So essentially this hit key variable will be equal to the key of whatever we hit at the present time. Okay. Now that we have that, what we're going to do is, just to make sure that this works, we're going to have if hit key is not equal to nothing. So if we did in fact actually hit a key, we're going to print hit key. So if I hit play now, actually did I add that script in here? Yeah, I did. If I hit play now, we can see every time we click, it will type out a random number like this. Okay, and if you remember from my other video the other day, I forgot what it was titled, this number indicates what key in memory. So you know, if I were to hit the A key, that in memory that has a number of 97. So let's convert these from their integer states into their character states by doing well, let's actually do let's have character value will be the name of this variable, will equal bg.events to character hits key 0 like this, comma true. Then what we're going to do is print character value to the console to make sure this works. So if you remember, we're just if you remember, this hit key variable is actually a list as indicated right here, but since we only want to get the first item from that list, or the first thing inside that list, we're just going to put hit key 0. So if I hit play, we can see every time we tap, it's going to print the number value and then what it's actually equal to underneath. So 97A, 115S, 100D, and etc. Okay, now that we have that, what we are going to do is add this character value to our input string. So let's have own inputs is going to plus equal the character value. Character value like this. So I'm going to hit this I right here and do game and then show debug properties, and you should see every time I hit P, input does not exist. Oh, user inputs. My mistake, I named my thing wrong. User input, because that's the name of our game property. You should see every time I tap up here, it's going to add it inside the game engine under user input. Let's now have it so that our text object will display our user input like this. So let's go back into our script, and let's do own user inputs is going to plus equal, not own user inputs, own.text is going to equal own user inputs, like this. So it's going to display what our string variable is on our text object. So if I hit P, it's just going to do that, and as you can see, that works. Okay. What we now want to do is have it so that whenever it reaches, let's say, a character amount of 10, so after we type 10 characters on a line, it's going to drop down to the next line. And we can do this by essentially defining a variable up here, and I will call this user inputs, or actually I'll just call this generic inputs, is going to be equal to our own user inputs. So this variable right here is going to be equal to this game property. What we're going to do is have it so that whenever we type out a character, or whenever we type out something in the Blender game engine, we're going to have it so that if the length of inputs modulus 10 is equal to 0. So essentially, if the length of our thing is like 20, if we divide that by 10, there's no remainder at 0. What we're going to do is have own user inputs is going to plus equal a new line. So it's going to add a new line to our string, or it's just going to drop down to the next line. So if I hit play now, you should see every time we tap, it's just going to do this. And as you can see right here, on the first character we typed, it immediately went down to the next line. We can get rid of this by doing, not and like that, and the len of user input and the length of the inputs is not equal to 0. So if we hit play, we see we can tap, and there you go. We can now type, and it goes down vertically like this. Alright guys, I hope you found this useful. I will go over my script just for one more second. I'll drag this down like this. So at the top, we imported logic and events from the BGE. We defined key events as equal to logic.keyboard.events. Then we had it so that the hit key will be equal to the exact key that we type. So it's going to do K for K and key events, and it's going to check, and it's going to, whatever key is just tapped or just activated is going to store it within this hit key variable. We then define this user variable inputs. So input was equal to our string game property. And if our list of hit keys actually was not equal to nothing, so if we indeed actually typed something, it was going to print that hit key to the console. It was going to define character value as equal to whatever the letter form of that integer was, and it was going to print that character value to the console, and then it was going to add that character value to our own user input string. If the length of the inputs divided by 10 was equal to 0, so essentially, well, that's not really the right way of saying it. If we could divide our length of our input by 10 and have it so that it has no remainder, and it wasn't on the first letter in the alphabet, or on the first letter in the string, it was just going to go down to the next line. And finally, on this one, we finally had our text object display the game property, or display the string property. So if I hit P, you can see every time we click, it's just going to drop down after 10 characters. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. Hope you found this useful.